Alright everyone, let's talk about some rares in Raid Shadow Legends that you are going to want to keep and not use as food, especially if you don't have a copy of them already. So let's spend a good amount of time today in the index section just so you can get an idea of what factions they're a part of, what their affinities are going to be, and just so you can get a better idea of kind of where they're going to be located. So with that being said, we're going to talk about a few different categories, but I can't make this video without mentioning the superstar rares in Raid Shadow Legends. These are going to be rares that are 100% endgame viable. They're going to be extremely competitive, even alongside epics and some legendaries. That is how good they are. Absolutely going to be worth taking to level 60. So if you don't have a copy of one of these yet, you are going to definitely want to be on the lookout. And we're going to start off with a high elf, and that is going to be none other than Apothecary. Absolutely phenomenal champion. Definitely make sure if you don't have a copy of him, you are on the lookout. And the good news about Apothecary is he is not a void rare. He's a magic rare, which means you can end up getting him from mystery shards. So yes, the chance of getting a rare from mystery shards is low at only 1.4%, but you're going to be doing a lot of mystery shard summons. You end up getting these just from playing the game, just from farming. They're going to accumulate, as you guys can see. A lot of people who have been playing for a while have lots of mystery shards saved up, so definitely be on the lookout for those mystery shard pulls. Those rares do kind of pop out of nowhere, so if you don't have an Apothecary, you might end up being very surprised one day when you end up summoning him from a plain old mystery shard. Now, the other superstar rare that I wanted to talk about is going to be a void rare, and I'm going to talk about void rares in general in a second, but I wanted to mention her first because she is going to be one of the other superstar rares in Raid Shadow Legends, completely endgame viable. Definitely going to be worth taking to level 60. Absolutely going to want to make sure that you keep a copy of her if you do get her, and that is going to be Cold Heart. Now, Cold Heart is phenomenal. Once again, definitely going to be very competitive, even alongside epics, and I would argue legendaries. That is how good she is. Super insane champion. Definitely plenty of strategies to use her in Spider. Even Spider's 20 strategies involve multiple Cold Hearts, actually. So very, very good champion. The only downside is, unlike Apothecary, she is a void rare, which means you cannot get her from mystery shards. You cannot get her from ancient shards. You can only end up getting her from void shards. And that is definitely a downside because void shards are pretty rare. The game values them a lot higher than ancient shards because the void affinity in general is considered to be a better affinity than the other affinities because it doesn't really have a weakness. So it's a little bit strange, but that's just kind of how Plarium does it. You guys know void shards are definitely much more difficult to come by. But the upside is there are not as many void champions, so if you do end up doing a decent amount of void summons just by playing the game, even if you don't buy shards, eventually, because she is still a rare, you should end up coming across a copy of Cold Heart sooner. I can't really say that because I still haven't gotten myself a Bellower, but you will hopefully end up getting a copy of her eventually. And if you do, definitely do not use her as food. Now, we're going to kind of go along that whole idea of what I was talking about voids. They are more rare. Void shards are much more desirable, much more valued by Plarium, and even a single summon of a void shard is a much bigger deal than a summon of an ancient shard or a bunch of mystery shards because of that. So I would honestly say you guys just want to make sure that you at least take a look at any of the skills of any void rares that you summon before you use them as food, because you are not going to be able to come across them nearly as much. Now, there are still plenty of really not good void rares. I would say at least half of them are still just no good, and you can definitely use them as food without feeling bad about it. But there are also a lot of really good ones, and the main reason why I say this is because it's going to be a lot more difficult for you to find a replacement if you accidentally use a void rare as food in comparison to a non-void rare. You can't end up getting them from mystery shards. You can't end up getting them from ancient shards. So if you really want a void rare and then you accidentally use it as food and then you want to get him again, it could be a long time before that ends up happening just because of the way that void shards work. So if you're a collector like me, that's not a problem. I like to keep a copy of everything. Also for fusions, always not a bad idea. But if you're not somebody who really is interested in doing that, or you're very limited on champion space, which is a huge problem in this game, Plarium, please increase our champion vault space. It's been too long. We need more space. We really do. But I thought I would mention that about void rares in general. So that's a whole little category you want to pay a little bit of extra attention to. Now, speaking of void rares, there are some absolutely amazing ones that I wanted to talk about and tell you guys that if you do come across these void rares, you definitely do not want to use them as food. So we already talked about Coldheart, which is going to be a dark elf, one of the superstars. Now let's move into Ogryn Tribes, and this is actually going to be a void rare that I have still not got yet, even though I've been playing the game since April, and that is going to be Bellower. Bellower is absolutely phenomenal for being a campaign farmer. That's kind of his specialty. Very, very good. And once again, if you come across him, you are not going to want to use him as food. If you don't have a copy of him, you're going to want to keep him. Next up is kind of along the lines of Bellower, another campaign farmer, also going to have some uses in Fire Knight, just a pretty darn good overall void champion, a void rare. And that is going to be in the demon spawn category, which is going to be right here. And that is going to be Fellhounds. Now, I've talked about this a little bit before in another video, Fellhound in specific. He's similar to Bellower in the sense that he can also be a campaign farmer because of his A1 skill, his auto attack. It's also got a little bit of a quicker animation, so I've heard of people being able to build their Fellhound to be even a quicker farmer than Bellower. But he also has this reflect damage on all allies, which is really, really awesome. Going to come in super handy for certain situations like Fire Knight. So Fellhound is definitely going to be another void rare that you're going to want to be on the lookout for. Now moving back up to High Elves, of course, we have one of the new additions to the game, Reliquary Tender, most notably known for her second skill, removes all debuffs from all allies, then places a 15% continuous heal buff on them for 2 turns. If you don't have a copy of her and you come across her, definitely going to want to keep 1 copy of her at the least. Then we're going to go to Barbarians, and Barbarians, we have Ragemonger. Ragemonger is just another really, really solid, well-built void rare. He's got a continuous heal on his auto attack if it crits. He also has a poison on his second skill, and he has an HP burn on his third skill. So just a very good champion. There's a lot of really good rares in the game where they actually surprisingly have a pretty good skill kit, and I would say Ragemonger is just definitely going to be one of those champions. You can see he has 4 skills, very good, very solid, well synergized kit. You're going to want to keep a copy of him if you come across him. And finally, let's see, we're going to move into Dwarves now, and also going to be a Void Dwarf, that is going to be Bulwark. Now, Bulwark is once again just a really, really good champion. You could end up getting him from a tournament reward recently, but if you do somehow come across him, you definitely want to keep at least 1 copy of him just because he has a very, very well-built, well-synergized skill kit. Now, I'm going to get back to Dwarves in a second because there is something that I want to talk about when it comes to Dwarves in general. But before I do so, I want to mention just overall a list of rares that you are going to want to keep, and that is going to be the 4 starter rares. Now, I say that because there are a lot of rares in the game, and we're not talking about void rares right now. I think that's everything that I've mentioned about void rares. Once again, I would just take a look at the skills of any void rares that you do summon because you don't really get to summon them too often. Double check. As you guys could see in the last few minutes, I talked about a list of what it was, 6 void rares that were really good. There are still a lot of bad ones, but it can't really hurt to double check because some of them do have some pretty decent skill kits. Now, outside of void rares, there are a lot of rares in the game, and a lot of them are decent. They aren't bad. A lot of them are just straight up bad. And then you have some of them that are pretty darn good. And interestingly enough, the 4 starter rares are actually pretty good in comparison to all the other rares in the game. Now, I'm not saying they are the best rares, but they are definitely well above the average. You know, you kind of have the average rare, and interestingly enough, even though they are the starter rares, they are actually going to be, all of them are going to be, I would say, above average, with, of course, Kale being, without a doubt, the best one, in my opinion. Now, I know some people disagree with me, so I'm not going to say too much about that, but Team Kale for life, everyone. Okay, so let's talk about these starter rares really quickly. So if we go to Dark Elves, we're going to have Kale here. He's going to be a rare. Once again, these are not going to be void rares, so you can end up getting all of these from the summons, the Mystery Shard summons. Kale is fantastic, absolutely great overall champion, good campaign farmer, good for the clan boss, decent for dungeons. He's not perfect at anything, but for a starter rare, he is fantastic. So definitely, if you don't have a copy of him, if you didn't pick him as your starter rare, definitely a champion you want to keep a copy of. Then, of course, in the Sacred Order, you have Athel or Athel, another very, very good starter rare. And if you, whoever your starter rare that you picked was, you still want to end up keeping one copy of any of the other ones if you end up coming across them, because they are all going to be above average rares. Then in the High Elves, you have Elhain. Let's see, and we have her right here. And you are going to have Gaelic as well, which I feel like most people probably agree that he is the worst out of the 4, but everyone feels a little bit differently about the starter champions. Still, definitely make sure you keep a copy of them if you guys don't have one. Alright, and finally, the last thing that I wanted to talk about is kind of along the lines of new rares. Now, there are a lot of not really super great new rares. Some of them are great, though. And one of the newer factions that we have, Dwarves, surprisingly, when it comes to the rares in the Dwarves category, a lot of them are actually really good. And this is something that I've been noticing. So, when you end up coming across any dwarf, you definitely want to take a look at them to see if they're one of the good dwarves, because I just went through this list right here, and we're not going to talk about the voids. Out of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, out of the 8 dwarves, I think 4 of them are very, very good. And we are going to have Grumbler as one of them, and then we're going to have Runic Warder as another one of them. Very, very good skill kits. I'm not going to go over them all in detail because I think I've done so in some other videos, and also I don't want the video to end up being too long. But there are a lot of good ones. Honor Guard as well. Let's see. Is this Honor Guard? Very, very solid skill kit. For rares, these are not too bad. And then, well, I guess Bulwark as well is another one. But that's a void rare. So definitely be on the lookout. I say dwarves because it's really easy to tell them apart from other champions. So if you are doing summons, if you are newer to the game, and you're doing mystery shard pulls and you end up coming across a dwarf, take a look at it really quickly, look at their skills, because a lot of the dwarves, I feel like they kind of, Plarium understood that, you know, we're going to make the rare dwarves good. I think some of the other ones are not so great, but the rare dwarves overall, in comparison to a lot of the other factions and the rares that other factions have to offer, like if you just take a look at Ogryn Tribes, for example, you know, there's not really a whole lot of really good rare Ogryn Tribe characters, but when it comes to the dwarves, there definitely are. So that's kind of the last category. So anyway, this is just kind of like a little bit of a list or recap of rares that you want to consider keeping at least a copy of and not using as food. So with that being said, that's going to be it for the video today. Thank you everyone for watching. I really hope that you guys learned something, especially if you are new to the game, and that this video helped out. If you guys did enjoy this video and you want more videos like this in the future, consider subscribing to the channel. Really do appreciate the support, everyone. We are getting closer and closer to 20,000, so thank you once again. And of course, if you want to help out, taking a quick quarter of a second or so to like the video means a whole bunch. So thank you to everyone who does that. If you guys are interested in more Raid Shadow Legends videos, they should be popping up on the screen right about now. Plenty of guides, videos, tutorials, and all sorts of stuff Raid Shadow Legends related on the channel. Feel free to check it out. But if not, until next time, this is Salt of the Salty Guild, signing out.